Magandang araw. Ako si QA Code. In this video, I'll be going over another string problem. In this case, it'll be the designer door map problem on Hackerrank. So what I'm going to do is open up my IDE. One thing I wanted to mention is that I kind of enjoy using lightweight IDEs. So I actually created a shortcut on my desktop here. It just literally opens python.exe, but then you pass in an argument of idle lib for library, which is automatically included when you download Python. So simply when we open it, it opens up Python, and then it just opens up the shell right here. And then I can go to open, go down to my C drive, and then open up the file. And then we are good to go. So this is basically the design that we're going to be doing in this problem. Let me actually just go back to here. So one thing is that you must, the mat size must be n times m. So n is always an odd number, and then m is always 3 times that number. So for example, in this case, which is what I have, it's 9, the height is 9, and the width is 27. So one thing that I noticed right away is that this is, of course, is always in the middle. So because this height is always 9, it's very easy because we have 4 on the top and we have 4 on the bottom, and then of course the welcome sign is just in the middle. So let's see here. What's our input? Our input is just 2 numbers. So let me just make a variable for those 2 numbers. So let's call it nums, and then we will have input, and then we can split. That way nums is now a list, so height, and then width. I can just do h and w equals, change this to an int. You got nums for the first one, int the second one. In the first one, we can just take nums at index 0, which of course is going to be, let's say, the 9. And in this case, we have nums at index 1, which is, of course is going to be the 27. So there's our height and width. So just as an example, print hw, hit F5, 9 and 27, and it prints out exactly what we have, 9 and 27. So that's it for width and the height. The next section is the actual pattern. So as you can see here, the pattern is like a period and then a vertical bar and then another period. So we can just do pattern, period, vertical bar, period. So that is our pattern. And then as I mentioned, because the welcome section is always in the middle, you're going to have half of it on the top and then half of it on the bottom. And you'll see that each individual or each additional row is going to have 2 more patterns repeated compared to the last row. So that's something else to consider. And what we can do is we can just have a print statement inside of a loop to get the first 4 in this case, and then afterwards we can do the same thing, but we'll just do it in reverse order. So first we'll make a half variable. So we'll get an int. So for half, it's simply the height subtracted by 1, and then we can divide that by 2. We need to, I don't think we need to make that into an int, but we'll do that just in case. Let's just print half. So that way if we have 9 and 27, the half is going to be 4, which is exactly what we want. I can get rid of this. And also just to make sure, you can actually, I believe it is, if you type, and you put that in, oops, that's not even spelled right. Type, that should be, oopsie, 9, 27. It's an int, okay. So there's our half variable, and now we just need the loop. So for I in range half, we need to, the goal in this case is to print 4. So this is going to loop 4 times because of course half is variable 4 if we put in 927. So let's just see here. So we need to print the pattern, of course. We can't just do that because we need to format it with all of these other dashes. So like in previous videos, we can just use the center method on that. But what we're also going to do Let me do it like this. So print the pattern, and we're going to multiply the pattern a number of times. So for example, for this third row, the pattern is repeated 5 times, but you can't just multiply it by 5 because it would be based off of the index of whatever row you're in. So we can just do the index times 2, and then simply plus 1. So for example, this first row is index 0. 0 times 2 is obviously 0, and then you add 1, which is 1. So the first row we're going to have 1. But then what about the second row? The second row, we have indexes. This is row or index 1. 1 times 2 is 2. You add 1, you get 3. For row 3, index 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 you get 5. So this is how many times we're going to do that pattern. So that actually seems to work. And like in previous videos, as I mentioned, we can just do center. How long is it going to be? Well, that's simply width. And then what are we going to fill in the gaps with? Well, that's just going to be the dash. So let's just actually try that and see what we get. I'm missing something here. The colon. So if it's 9 and 27, that looks perfect. So then after the loop, we can just simply put print welcome. And then that also needs to be centered. And then put in the width, and then put in the dash. So that should give us, it was never closed. See, here's the thing that one of the reasons why I like that is because, or why I like using this IDE and simple IDEs in general. I don't like having a habit, especially for somebody who's new, a habit of relying on IntelliSense and autocomplete. Because if I make the mistake a bunch of times and I get errors, I feel like it helps me remember for the future to not make those errors again when I'm constantly getting, errors that pop up, as opposed to just using like autocomplete and stuff like that. It's not really going to be as memorable, especially when it comes to things like this, because if I type in a string and press the dot, usually it would show a list of all of the available functionality with the string class. But in this case, I don't have access to that, which means I have to actually, potentially read the documentation to see what's available. But I memorize it because I'm doing it manually so many times as opposed to kind of relying on it. So like if you've done programming for years, I imagine it won't really make a big difference, and you would just want to have an IDE that has autocomplete or some type of IntelliSense in order to speed up your coding. But for beginners, I prefer, or I also just suggest to do it like this way because it's just better for memorization in general. Especially as an example, if you're doing a whiteboard interview for a job, you're not going to have all the autocomplete functionality. So it's good to get it used. It's good to get used to doing it like this. Or even another example is doing it on paper. So let me just do the last loop. So for I in range, we'll still do half. But let's see here. Range is stop, start, stop, and then step. So we'll go half, and we'll go to 0, but then we'll just do -1. That just basically means that we're going to be going in reverse order instead of regular order. Print the same. We can actually just copy the same thing, but we're going to do -1 instead because we're going backwards. And I think that should be fine. Let me go ahead and print that. 9, 27. Oh, that looks perfect. Let's go ahead and try it again. And we'll do 11. Actually, we'll do like 15 and 45. And there we go. That is actually good. So we'll just copy this into our thing here and see what we get. I think that should be fine. We'll go ahead and submit that. Alright, we are good to go. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe for more coding challenges. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. See you next time on Kuya Code. Paalam.